You and I suffer from a habit of taking freedom of speech and freedom of thought for granted. And the danger in that is when we don't realize that these freedoms can and often are suppressed, we forget to stand up for them when allowance for these same freedoms begins to deteriorate. The significance of these freedoms recently dawned on me when I was listening to someone who was relaying what it was like to live in Czechoslovakia in the 1980s under Soviet rule. He described a state in which conformity to the political establishment was so imposing that the regime employed secret police to ensure that nobody was expressing or harboring the wrong political ideas. This measure of the secret police was considered necessary because without it, a person might actually adopt ideas that appealed to their conscience, and even worse, they might start saying what they believe. As an ordinary citizen, you didn't know who was part of the secret police. It could be your best friend, your neighbor, or even a family member. And what this meant was you couldn't fully trust anyone. Now, imagine a society in which you had to withhold yourself from everyone for fear that if you were truly yourself, the secret police might snatch you in the middle of the night for not conforming to the program. Where this really hit home for me was in the realization that all of the most intimate relationships in my life wouldn't be possible in a society like that, because I would never allow myself to be vulnerable enough to achieve those levels of intimacy, not even with my wife. I would constantly be suppressing my true self. And I can't think of many things that are more oppressive or evil than that. So it puts into perspective how important these freedoms are in allowing us to enjoy the vital human connections that we in the West exercise every day. So with that in mind, when anyone attempts to infringe upon freedom of thought or freedom of speech, even in the slightest, I get a little cranky. And this is what got me reflecting on political correctness. Now, I'm not trying to compare the severity of oppression that was experienced under Soviet rule with what we refer to as political correctness. But I also think that PC impositions can be very insidious, especially when we interpret them as harmless. True democracy insists that there are valid concerns across the political spectrum, and freedom of speech and freedom of thought are the cornerstones of that diversity. Without that diversity, it's impossible to maintain a range of political choices to vote for. And without dialogue and diverse ideas, oppression and violence become normative. When we start insisting that certain political ideas are the correct ones and others are not the correct ones, that essential diversity begins to deteriorate. Now, I understand and even sympathize with the instinct to say that certain ideas or ways of speaking are insensitive to others. That's a way of expressing your ideas and arguing your point that is compatible with democratic values. But just because you believe something is true, it doesn't follow that you can impose those beliefs as the correct ones. I don't know if it's worth pointing this out, but I'm going to anyways. A lot of people trace political correctness back to Mao Zedong, who said that not to have a correct political point of view is like having no soul. His oppressive regime murdered more people than anyone else in history, with estimates as high as 75 million. And it must have been easy for him to rationalize that because those 75 million people didn't have souls, according to his logic. Instead of trying to enshrine what some people would describe as correct political ideas and incorrect ones, why don't we simply make the case that kindness and compassion are moral goods that we should all pursue? That will have the simultaneous effect of protecting our freedoms while also encouraging everyone to treat each other with dignity and respect. Thanks for watching. We're making videos like this on topics that I find interesting, and hopefully you do too, on a weekly basis. So if you do, then please like and share and follow and subscribe and all that good stuff. And if you do, I promise not to take that for granted.